Good morning, everybody. Now we can discuss about the topic cluster sampling in this PPT. Welcome to my session. I know you all are thinking about what is cluster sampling now. Before entering to my topic, let's have a ice-breaking section. I will ask you a question in coming slide. You just answer it. Okay. Fine. Hi all. See the slide and share your opinion. Which is your favorite actor? While you are thinking, you will get different answers. Even in the class of 15, we have different opinion. Some will prefer Mohanlal and some others will prefer Mammootty, right? We have our own opinion. So likewise, in a population of large groups, we have different opinion from different peoples. How will we collect any data of such opinions within a large group? Now we are going to discuss about that, right? So from person to person, each individual has their own opinion. So when we are collecting a data about any opinion of the public, we will get different opinions. For collecting such data, the large population should be divided into some groups. Let's see that. In the screen, we can see a large city. Lot of people are there with different opinions, whether they like Mohanlal or whether they like Mammootty and all. So for collecting such data from this large group, we can go and ask each individual. So we divide this whole population into some subgroups. And by collecting the opinion of that groups, we will get a total idea of the opinion of the public. So collecting such opinions by samples are called sampling. And dividing the population into groups are called clusters. So the clusters must be homogeneous for us to get correct data. I will repeat the point. While collecting a data from a large population, how can we get the correct opinion of the public from such sampling groups? We can discuss that, okay? Like shown in the picture, we will collect each person from each category to get the opinion of that group. Likewise, we will collect each individual or we will collect groups of people from different categories and we divide each groups into each clusters. Then different clusters we will collect data and analyze their opinion and we will get a total idea about the opinion of the public. From this picture, we can understand how we are collecting samples from a total population. From the first three rows, we are collecting from each row 1% or 2% each by different categories and different types of people. We are collecting a sample. Likewise, we are collecting different samples from different groups and we are collecting totally the opinion of the public by analyzing the opinion of the samples we are getting from the opinion of each clusters. In this slide, we can go through the definition of cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is a sampling technique where the researcher divides a large population into pre-existing heterogeneous groups known as clusters. Heterogeneous groups means different types of peoples included in each groups. In public, there will be different types of people. So likewise, in each groups, we want to get a sample of population. So each clusters will be differently grouped by different groups, schools, classes, village, ward, or different age groups or different gender. So public should be, a small portion of public should be included in each group. A required number of clusters are selected using random methods and the data is collected from all units within these selected clusters. When we are grouping population into each clusters will represent a sample of the large population. We can collect data by dividing clusters on their basis of age, gender, community, etc. So we can get a precise and correct data about the public opinion by sampling. Okay. So while doing cluster sampling, there is a procedure for the steps. First, we should define the population from where we should collect the data. those population who doesn't know about Mohanlal or Mammootty is not the correct population that we should select for this data collection. The data collection should first define the population, which type of population, where we should collect the data, etc. Then we should group the population. That's the second step, cluster the population. After grouping the population, we want to collect, reschedule the clusters, whether the clusters include heterogeneous groups or homogeneous groups of clusters are the, we should get the correct population sample of clusters. Then fourth step is to collect the data for analyzing. We can go through the steps in the cluster sampling. First step is define the target population. Then second, create clusters based on the natural groupings. Third, select clusters using random sampling methods. Fourth, decide whether to study all members or sample within the clusters. Fifth one, collect data from the selected unit. Sixth, analyze and interpret the findings. These are the steps in cluster sampling procedures. Cluster sampling is a way that is make easy to collect the data from a large public. Cluster sampling is often the more practical and economical option to collect data when the group is large. If the population is homogeneous, that means same type of category of people. In this example, whether the group is Malayali, they know the Malayalam film actors Mammootty and Mohanlal, it means a common group of people that is familiar to Malayalam film industry or Indian film industry. We can collect data from the heterogeneous group in cluster sampling, because when the group will include different types of people, whether they know Mohanlal, whether they don't know Mohanlal, or whether they are not at all interested in film, we can't get the correct data. So if the group population is homogeneous, cluster sampling will do the trick. But if the population is heterogeneous, we should collect the data by stratified samplings will go. Okay. In this slide, we can go through the advantages and limitations of cluster sampling. In cluster sampling has advantages like it will be cost effective, easy to implement, and it is very suitable for large scale studies and practically for scattered level of population. And it has its own limitations too. It will the data we are collecting will have sampling error. Clusters may not represent the population, means we will not get the correct precise data, and etc. And the cluster sampling steps and types are define population, create clusters, select clusters, collect data, and analyze data. So cluster sampling in totally means a probability sampling method in which population is divided into groups, clusters, and a few clusters are randomly selected from the studies. We should know how we want to group the clusters. The population, how is the population, likewise must be the clusters too. Okay. In this slide, we are discussing about different stages of sampling. So in cluster sampling, there is the first stage of cluster sampling, just dividing the population into different groups. In the second stage, we can divide the population into different stages. So such stages are called multi-stage sampling in cluster sampling. So the definition is, multi-stage sampling is an extension of cluster sampling where sampling happens in more than one stage. Instead of selecting everything inside a cluster, the researcher keeps selecting subgroups step by step. It's clear, I think. Okay. There is also another method of sampling in cluster sampling, such as area sampling. In area sampling is a type of cluster sampling where geographical areas are used as clusters. Instead of selecting individuals directly, the researchers select geographical units such as villages, districts, blocks, or state, etc. as a group. So by area-wise dividing the population, we call it as area sampling. In this slide, we are discussing about the uses of area sampling. It is used when the population is spread over a wide geographical region. Creating a complete list of individuals is very difficult or impossible. We can do it area sampling as our cluster sampling procedures. Fieldwork needs to be economical and practical also. So when the large is the population is very large, we can go to area sampling, cluster sampling procedure. Okay. So for collecting data, we are dividing population into different groups, and that is while collecting data from that groups, we are saying that procedure as cluster sampling. So here we go through the mind map. Cluster sampling means natural group of selected randomly. We will select the groups randomly. There are two stages of cluster sampling, stage 1 and stage 2. And we should define the population, identify the clusters, random selection of the clusters, and last collect the data. First, the procedures goes to define the population and identify the clusters are the procedures of cluster sampling. First, we should collect the data from which population that we should have an idea, and then further we will define the clusters and we randomly select the clusters to collect the perfect samples of data. This cluster sampling is used for school-based studies, large surveys, field research, and national assessment. This is a picture or a representation of the mind map where you can see the steps in cluster sampling more precisely. Just go through the define population, form clusters, assess cluster suitability, select clusters, list unit within the selected clusters, select elements if it is in multi-stage, analyze and interpret data. So by this slide I am concluding my session. So it's clear that cluster sampling means researchers divided a population into smaller groups known as clusters. Then they randomly select among those clusters to form a sample for the data collection. It's clear, I think. Thank you.